So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Diversity in Engineering Guest Speaker Series. This is what an engineer looks like. Tonight, we have Andrew Langstone as our guest speaker. And before we get started tonight, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that for everyone tuning in from Edmonton, we are currently situated on Treaty 6 territory, as well as on the Métis Nation of Alberta Zone 4. And this land has been home to a diverse population of various Indigenous and Métis communities, and these people have been the stewards of this lands for multiple generations. And I highly encourage everyone listening in tonight to take some time to learn about the culture and the history of the Indigenous peoples whose land you live on, if that is your situation, because I think it's important to know the history and culture of where you live. So yeah, um, I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier, but my name is Christina Sterletz. I use she, her pronouns. I will be guiding us through the discussion tonight. As similar to our other discussions we have a preset set of questions that Andrew will be answering, and then everyone is free to add questions in the chat as we go. And I'm really looking forward to getting started. So I think we'll start off with our first question here, which is, how did you get to where you are today in terms of your career, Andrew?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a graduate of the U of A Civil Engineering Co-op program, class of 2007. When yeah, when I graduated, at the time I graduated, I thought I wanted to be a structural design engineer, and that's where I started out my career, including starting a part-time MEng program in structural engineering at the same time as working full-time. But after a few years of real world experience, I decided that that wasn't the right fit for me. And I made a switch to project management with a commercial general contractor. Split the last 8 years between two general contractors in Edmonton. And then a couple of years ago, took a hard right turn in my career and to become a co-founder of a tech startup. And so now I run a software company called QuoteMe. So yeah, that's how I got from 2007 to today.
Yeah, that's super cool to hear. I think we'll touch in a bit more about that hard right turn to founder of tech company from civil engineering grad. So yeah, the next question we have prepared for you is, what inspired you to pursue engineering?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I didn't really know much about what business or career options or paths there were available to me. I was good at sort of the STEM courses, the science and math stuff, and it was my mom actually who suggested that maybe I try engineering. Um, going grade 12, looking for universities to apply to, I didn't actually really know what engineering was about. But I talked to some people in my life who were grown adults, and they told me that there's jobs in engineering after graduation. I thought, well, sure. I had the grades. I didn't have a better plan, so I gave it a shot.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us, especially those who enter engineering right from high school, kind of enter from a similar perspective. I can definitely relate to that idea of just kind of like being told, like, I mean, you like math and science and you want a job, so engineering's probably a good place to go to. So I had honestly, very similar reasons for looking into engineering. I didn't really talk to that many adults. I just had someone tell me, like, there are jobs and you do math. And I'm like, sounds good to me. And here we
Oh,
are
yeah,
today.
absolutely.
So, and then the next question I have here is, how do you define engineering?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's pretty simple. Engineering is the application of science to solve real world problems. So, um, yeah, science is the pure science is what happens in the lab in at school. It's research for the sake of expansion of knowledge, and engineering is taking those learnings and applying it to solve something, whatever it is in the real world. So, solving problems for other people.
So then, if you don't mind me asking, once you entered your first year of engineering, what then led you to pursue civil engineering in particular?
Uh, Good question. So I assume it's still the same way. The first year is pretty general, or it was when I went through. Um, I didn't know what stream I wanted to go into. I thought starting out probably chemicals where I'd end up, but yeah, I went through the first year courses and really found myself drawn to the statics and just sort of that world. Found it really interesting, and then yeah, so it was the first year that really took me to civil. So I had decent grades in first year. I could have pursued like almost any of the different streams, but that was the one that I felt, I don't know, it interested me the most. So chose civil engineering and went that direction.
Yeah, I think civil and mechanical engineering have the advantage in that there are two courses in first year that are like similar-ish to kind of stuff you would study, and then the other disciplines are like completely nothing you do in first year is really anything you would do in those disciplines. So I think that's it's really nice to find a course in like your first year that you can relate to and enjoy, and then that can kind of like help meaningfully guide what like ultimately discipline and specialization you want to go into.
Yeah, I think the organic chemistry labs turned me off chemical engineering. Just the way I smelled. I had to take a shower every time I got home. I could smell the lab all the way home on the bus, and I think that did me in.
Yeah, yeah. So the next question we have here is, how do you define success?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked this question. This is something that's really important to me, and something that I've wrestled with for a long time. So early in my career, it was right around the time that I transitioned from a design engineer to a project manager. I kind of made a conscious decision that I wanted to be both successful and happy. And I believed then, as I still do now, that for me those two things are related. Like I wouldn't consider myself happy if I did, or consider myself successful if I didn't feel happy. And I don't think that I would be happy if I didn't see myself as successful. Um, so of course, being an engineer, when I made that goal, I set out to apply a quantitative approach to defining success. So I was a project manager at the time, and I said, well, okay, how can I measure this? If my projects are successful, then by association, I must be successful. So I set out to establish some measurable criteria for the stuff I was overseeing, and that was my initial foray into it. But over time, my views on success have changed and evolved. And today, for me, my goal is to just surround myself with successful people and to do what I can to help them be successful in their pursuits. So that's whatever it means for them. Everyone has their own definition of success, and it's just to try to help others be successful. Um, it, it I don't see life as a zero sum game. So when you help other people around you succeed, um, like you'll succeed too. And so I don't know.
Hmm.
That's how I define success.
Yeah, so you were talking about your definition of success, and you said part of it was surrounding yourself by successful people. So how would you define that then?
It's whatever that means to them, right? So like if we were working together, if we were spending, time together, Christina, I'd ask you like, what's your definition of success? And, try to help you achieve that. So, how does diversity in engineering be successful? Well, I think you have some decent panelists on and you make sure your roster is full. And if I can help you do that, then I will, right? I'll
Mhm.
volunteer my time to help you be successful. And I don't always get it right. Sometimes I think what I think you think is success isn't maybe aligned with what you think success looks like to you. But generally, it's just it doesn't hurt to ask that question of others and see
Yeah.
what's truly important to them. Because it isn't a one size fits all solution, right? Like everybody has um, their own values, the things that are important to them, and so yeah, it's just trying to help people be successful in their lives, whatever that means.
Mhm. I think that's really, really, really nice to hear that your part of your version of success includes like uplifting others to help them with their definitions of success, and being aware that everyone has their own personal definition and that you need to be mindful of that in your own personal goals in pursuit of that. So I think that's very like admirable to hear. And so yeah, I like that answer. And then I really like the point you made about, helping others doesn't necessarily mean it's going to like hurt you, right? And this I think this very idea we get drilled to us, I think especially in a university environment where you are technically competing with all of your classmates for, I mean, a grade, but that does instill in you this idea of, and that, you know, like being compassionate and willing to help others will somehow hinder you. And I think that's a very like narrow perspective that, you know, it can take people to everyone should take some time to like really reflect on and realize that you're only going to help yourself by helping others. And it won't in any way like it can't like hurt you to help others, right? So yeah, so that was nice to hear, my 2 cents there. And then my next question I have now is, what do you enjoy most about your work?
Yeah, I think the thing I enjoy the most is the people I get to meet and interact with on a daily basis. I don't know. I really like getting to know people, getting to understand what motivates people, what inspires them, what makes them successful. Um, yeah, and I just love meeting new and interesting people, and that's, you know, I've kind of found a path for myself that that allows me to kind of um, yeah, collide with other people in all kinds of different walks of life, and that's what I enjoy.
Yeah, that's very, very nice to hear. And then would you mind touching, like, I'm not sure, like, since you've started like a really different like career path, has that forced you to like learn a bunch of new stuff, like in terms of like, you know, like tech, business, everything, than like might have been like traditionally taught in like your schooling?
Yeah, I used like exactly zero of my engineering courses today, I think. I shouldn't say that, but like, yeah, it's no, it has been drinking from a fire hose for the last couple of years in terms of learning. This is a very different world than I've ever been exposed to. Um, just the realities of how tech works as a business and how the capital flows and how like I had no experience developing software products or you know the cycle for it, how you go about planning it, how you go about building it, how you go about testing it, deploying it, getting feedback, iterating on it, all of that stuff, building a roadmap. None of that was um, didn't know any of that, and then there's the whole startup concept. We're doing something that we think is fairly unique. We don't really have competitors in our space, and so there's no roadmap to follow, right? We're not following anybody's footsteps. We're making it up as we go, and it's kind of like trying to build the aircraft while it's in flight. Um, yeah, it's an interesting gig, but certainly very different than anything I've done previously, and very different than what I learned in school. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, a tech startup to from civil engineering would be obviously very different. But I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because it just goes to show that like there is still so much learning that comes, like opportunities to learn after your undergrad. Like, you know, learning doesn't just come from like what you study in university and what classes you take in university. It's so much more broader than that. And I think just like an engineering degree is more like gives you the basis of a good way to like form, like, you know, good way to understand how problems should be solved and how to go about solving problems.
yeah,
But like you're going to be faced with obviously very different challenges than like assignments you've been given in class. And so yeah, I just wanted to touch on that briefly.
yeah. I think engineering gives you a lot of the tools needed to be a problem solver, and so you know my definition of engineering is the application of science to solve problems, and so yeah, I think that you know sort of the methodical approach to you know to solving a problem, to isolate variables and try to change them one at a time, to kind of you know planning stuff out, and you know that none of that changes, right? The sort of concepts are still valid, but yeah, completely different application. um, yeah.
One of our someone typed in the chat, they were wondering if you ever had Peter Flynn as a professor because he uses the drinking from a fire hose analogy frequently.
I have not had Peter Flynn, and I haven't had the chance to meet him either. So I'm curious to now.
I guess it's a quite a popular saying there. And then the next question we have here is, why is diversity in engineering and inclusion important to you?
Yeah, I mean this dovetails nicely into the conversation about solving problems. I think when you're trying to solve problems, diversity is super important, and that, I mean that in every manner of the word, whether it's gender, age, nationality, upbringing, socioeconomic background, whatever, all of it that plays into it, and so that certainly includes diversity in engineering being important. I think any individual's approach to solving a problem is shaped with their experiences and their worldviews, and there's always more than one way to solve a problem. So, um, having a diverse range of vantage points helps to bring up potential solutions, different ways of skinning the proverbial cat. And if you pair that with an environment that promotes collaboration, you can end up with some truly incredible results. You know, I I've always had the opinion that no matter how good the current solution is, there's always a better way to do it. And having
Yes.
a diverse range of opinions and people looking at it just helps you make it better. So yeah, no, diversity to me is incredibly important.
Yeah, and then we touched on this in our other discussions, but we touched on the importance of inclusion. So I guess like it's not only just about having a diverse workforce, it's having a diverse workforce that feels welcomed and respected to share their solution to the particular problem. And I think and that comes everyone in the workforce is a little bit of their responsibility to make sure that every one of your like employers feels like included in the conversation and that their opinions aren't like belittled or disrespected.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think certainly, like I said, you pair that environment of collaboration and trust, and that doesn't mean that everybody's like you do everybody's idea, right? But that every idea is heard and kind of judged on its merits and compared against the other ones. And sometimes you take parts of A and parts of B and parts of C, and you come up with D, and it's better than any of the individual solutions would be. But yeah, it's really important to just have that sort of open and inclusive environment where people aren't afraid to speak and where their voices are heard. That's really how you get the best solutions.
Yeah, and to that I would add that I think the world we're facing into is just having more and more complex problems that are going to have to require a much more diverse workforce in order to tackle these problems. Because like like different, I mean, engineers are going to play a vital role when it comes to solving the various problems of our current climate crisis we're undergoing. And I think that's literally from every aspect of engineering. Like even if you're doing electrical engineering, you realize like your role, you play a role on like the global impact in what you do. And that's more than from designing renewable energies, that's from like designing technologies and how they are used and how much power they consume. And I think for these types of like really big complex problems, we're going to need an extremely diverse team of engineers to like tackle it, like you said. And I think definitely like engineers for forever have been on the mindset of whatever solution there is, there's probably a better way to do it. And there's a better solution for whatever problem is at hand. So that's kind of, I think that's a lot of the basis from like a lot of our technological improvements, right? So
Yeah, when it comes down to it, there isn't a whole lot of invention that happens, but there's a ton of innovation where it's just like you know working, improving, take what you have and make it a little bit better, and over time that compounds. And you look at a car at the turn of the century versus a car in the 1950s versus a car today, and how much just how much different they are and how much better they are in effectively every aspect, right? They're safer, they have way more bells and whistles, they're way more comfortable, and they generally get way better fuel economy. So
yeah.
like somehow we've managed to make gasoline, or I mean now we're starting to make electricity do all that for us. But I mean, if you just look at the internal combustion engine, like we've taken that same fuel source and extracted more and more and more out of it. So yeah, no, it's just building on what's already there, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And then the next question I have for you is, are there any interesting like engineering challenges in your field of work?
Yeah, our problems are problems of scale. Tech's a funny business. It's certainly unlike anything I've ever dealt with in the sort of physical brick and mortar world. So at QuoteMe, our customer usage, so we're a SaaS software, it's cloud-based software, and our usage has grown at 80% month over month this year, which is incredible. But that
Mhm.
introduces all kinds of wonderful bottlenecks that show up, and they're generally not the ones you're expecting. So we're always looking for ways to improve the performance of our software. Um, and of course there's certainly a balance between and a trade-off between effort and results, right? There's in the real world there's limited time and our customers want answers, so we have to find ways to solve the problems that our technology presents us. So generally for us, yeah, it's problems of scale, whether it's internal process problems that you have a use case that happens once a day, but then you have, and it's not bad, you can handle that. But then all of a sudden you have 10 times as many customers in a couple of months, and that once a day turns into 10 times a day, and all of a sudden people can't do it anymore.
Mhm.
Or on the tech side, you have one, a page on your app takes a second to load, and then all of a sudden it takes 2 minutes to load, and you will start to multiply that by all your customers, and it's problems of scale are really interesting problems to try to solve. So those are the problems we try to work around and try to engineer solutions to, and we we
Yeah.
don't always get it right, but that's that's what we're trying to do.
I think that's the really interesting aspect when you look at like startups is that, the challenges in those fields are like so diverse and unique depending on what startup you're like working at. And I think, yeah, especially like tech startups are a very unique opportunity to like face some interesting challenges. So, like don't let like, some people are like excited to join startups because of like, the unique opportunity to like handle different challenges. Like my friend who is a finance major, she wanted to get a position at a tech startup because she thought it would be like very interesting to be in such a like different environment because it's so different than like a well established company typically.
Yeah.
So it's very cool to see, and there are more opportunities obviously in like smaller scale startup companies, and as they're going to be more involved in a wider variety of processes. So I think that's pretty cool of startups.
Yeah, it's an interesting world. Interesting world. So
Mhm.
yeah. we can talk about that more later if you guys want to, but it's definitely a different space entirely. Yeah.
Mhm. So, what obstacles have you faced in your career?
I think for me, I think the biggest challenge, and this is not a specific obstacle, but just something at large, is that mentorship is really hard to come by. If you get a job at McDonald's or something, that you'll get a ton of hands-on training. They show you exactly how to do your job. They give you all kinds of oversight. There's all kinds of mentorship in the first, training period. Um, but most professional jobs, and I don't think this is limited to engineering, um, but certainly in my experience, engineering falls into this category. They kind of just give you a problem and expect you to go solve it, and you're sort of left to your own devices. Like generally, there's resources you can leverage, whether it's written resources or people you can ask questions of, but there's very little day-to-day kind of working side by side to solve a problem, at least in my experience. So most of the major obstacles I've run into are problems that I just straight up didn't know how to solve or didn't even know where to start.
Mhm.
Um, and as my career progressed and I gained more experience, the problems just got bigger in scope. They got more complex, and the available supports diminished. There was less people, like senior to me that I
Yeah.
could go ask questions of. Um, and so yeah, it took a long time to build up sort of a network of advisors and peers and mentors to lean on, now to kind of help me out when I don't know what to do. Like, what do I know about software? I mean, really, you know, you figure it out as you go. But yeah, mentorship, I think, is the biggest challenge that I faced. Was just, and don't get me wrong, I've had a lot of great mentors in my career, and some really awesome people along the way who've really helped carry me and help guide me. But it's I think that's the toughest thing to find.
I think this is a very like honest answer when it comes towards like actual challenges like within your job that you weren't expecting is just like it's hard. And now you are the engineer and it is your responsibility to solve the problem, and it's great to like mention that the value and importance of having like a support network you can refer to and make sure everything you think you're doing is okay, because like if you're going to be working in civil or mechanical engineering or any type of engineering, you're designing stuff that's going to be used by a lot of people. So it is much better that you get a second set of eyes to just kind of like be like, oh, no, like I kind of get what you did. Then like, just tell your boss, you're like, yeah, I think this is good, but like I haven't checked it with anyone, or like I've never seen this problem before and I'm completely unfamiliar with it. But I think like this go is good to go. So I think that's like really stressing the importance of like you don't have to like completely like solve it by yourself, no help at all. That it is important to get help and to make sure what you don't know, you figure out how to know, because it is important.
Yeah, I think the goal. I think there's the things you know, the things that you know you don't know, and the things that you don't know. And I think the goal is not really to increase what you know. The goal is to decrease what you don't know that you don't know. Because
Yeah.
it's those unknowns that really burn you. It's not the things that you're aware are outside of your skill set, or that you're aware are could be problems that you don't know how to solve. It's the things that like you're just totally blind to.
Mhm.
And I think that's where experience really comes in, is the people who are able to know the things they don't know. If that
Yeah, and I think that also plays into the importance of having a diverse workforce, is that those different perspectives can then like point out those things that you were just completely unaware of, right? Or and based on like their own backgrounds and their understandings, that they can help point those things out. So yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So next question we have here is, um, are you where you thought you would be in terms of your career? And if you had the opportunity to start your career all over again, what would you do differently?
Uh, am I where I thought I would be? No. Not at all. If you had asked me on the day that I graduated from U of A where I would have seen myself at my current age, I probably would have told you working as a structural design engineer. If you had asked me that same question 3 years ago, I probably would have told you I'd be managing construction projects. A tech startup was never in the plans.
Mhm.
But the opportunity presented itself, and life is what happens when you're making plans. So here I am. Um, my role is very different today than I thought that it would be at any point along the way, but my goals haven't changed much. I still want to be happy. I still want to be successful. I still want to meet new, interesting people, and I still want to explore new opportunities as they come up. So, um, yeah, that has changed. As for how would I do it, would I do anything differently? I think the only change I would make is that I would have started networking earlier and made a lot more of an effort to maintain relationships and stay in touch with the people that I met early on. Um, I think that in my opinion, the classroom and what they teach you at school puts too much emphasis on the classwork and not enough emphasis on human relationships. Um, for me, as an example, I've never applied for a job that I've got um,
Mhm.
in my professional career. Uh, every job that I've got was because somebody I knew was looking for help, and they thought it'd be a good fit. So my first job out of school was because of a classmate of mine. His friend I don't
Yep.
even know what the connection was, but had a small structural engineering firm. I was looking for a recent grad. And so I got introduced and I got a job. The second job I got when I wanted to go work for a general contractor, a different classmate of mine was already working for a general contractor and they were hiring people, and I made the switch. Third job I got, as I followed that second classmate. He went to a different company and he said the grass is greener, and I followed him over. And even now today, like at Quote Me, three of our biggest customers, there's leaders there in those companies who were classmates of mine at the U of A. So yeah, networking is incredibly important, and just making relationships. And you don't know when you're going to cross paths again, and you don't know you don't know where it's going to turn out. So certainly
Exactly.
I think
Hmm.
that's important.
That's like the common saying. It's like it's about who you know, right? And that's like totally the thing. Like it's definitely like if you have a connection somewhere, like to someone at a company, you have a higher chance of getting that position just because, if you get referred to by someone, that is like an inherent level of like, like trust, right? Like, this person trusts your connection. So thereby they trust that, they're friends with someone who is competent enough to hire, right? And that's kind of the idea behind that. And I love how you emphasize that in like, where we're focused a lot more on our coursework than realizing our peers beside us could be our most vital network later on when it comes to like looking at careers and stuff. And it's more than just like networking at networking events. It's like networking even within your own like lecture theater, right?
For sure.
Because these people could be people you work with in the future, or that's like you mentioned, like your classmates were the connections that opened you up to other opportunities. And then what I think I want to touch on a little bit is you were presented with this opportunity to work at a tech, like start a tech startup. How was that? Like, how was that from the transition from like civil? I just like want to dive into it a little bit, like the transition from like civil engineering to like tech startup, because there's not a lot of like strong links there, is all I'm gonna say.
Uh, there is. It isn't. I mean, it is very different, but it's not as different as you think. So, um, what we're doing is solving a problem for general contractors,
Yeah.
and we're building software for the construction industry. And so, um, I used to be the prototypical client of ours now today. So, although I don't know much about writing the code to make our application dance, um, I the the business side of it is still very very relevant. So, um, you know, prior to this, I was a minority partner at a local mid-sized general contractor, and like we would often on Friday afternoons, sit around the lunchroom and have a beer after work, and between the sort of leadership team there, talk about things we could improve for the business. Not working in the business, but working on the business. Like what are some things we can do to improve process, to improve just the way we work. And the reality is, there's only so many things that you can take on as an initiative, right? Everybody's busy with their day to days, and it's added work, and change is hard. Um, but now I just wake up every morning and it's like, how can I make Crawford better? Like we're taking some of those problems that I used to sort of muse about on a Friday afternoon and actually setting about solving them. So yeah, it's a very different it's a different world. Totally.
Hmm.
I mean, like yeah, it's um I've never worked alongside software engineers until now. Just all of it is new, but the problems that we're solving are um, they're construction problems, and so I'm still kind of connected there. So yeah, it's an interesting journey, and it's not for everybody. And I certainly didn't think it was for me either, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's really nice to hear that, like, you can still have a plan, but you're not tied down to that plan. Nothing is tying you down to like follow a very certain or a specific path. And that if you find an opportunity you find exciting, you can make that decision obviously based on what you want to do. But like, don't tie yourself too strongly to whatever plan you have, because obviously even in your career your interests and your passions change. And from what you said, like how like something I didn't wouldn't traditionally connect construction and like software companies together, but that there is like a market for that, and there is the market that has been made. And I think it goes to show that like if you are currently studying one field and you're maybe interested in a slightly different field, it's worth looking into if there are connections, because there could be, and you could connect the two. And your experience from one side, like you said, your experience from construction is now helping you understand like your like users more
Right.
from like the tech point of view. So that is very always lovely to hear. All of our speakers have had very interesting career paths, and it's always refreshing and nice to hear that like you're not tied down to a plan. And like if you have your plan and you achieve your plan, that's great. But then if that changes, it's also okay. So yeah, I'm going to transition into our next question now.
Sure.
And oh, I already asked you this. What would you do differently if you were going to start your career back from the beginning again? But you answered this question, so I will move on. And then the next question I have here is like, do you have any advice for anyone tuning in right now, or for anyone watching this later, who we're all like engineering undergrads, or all on like literally quite the cusp of our career engineering careers right now? Anything is possible, and it's any tips or advice you got would be great.
Sure. I'm going to double down on the networking thing. I'm going to say get out there and meet people. That you mentioned it. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It is 100% true. And I'll also throw this out there, and your profs will probably censor this if they see it, but yeah, unless you're pursuing a career in academia, unless you want to go tenure track and become a professor, the grades don't matter nearly as much as people make you believe. Nobody has ever asked me for my transcripts. And I'll just say, like, the days I spent drinking beer at the bar with my friends during undergrad have gone way further and taken my career further than the days I spent in the library studying. So getting the degree is important. Don't get me wrong. Like it's important that you pass, and it's important that you maintain a certain GPA, but the connections that you make along the way are likely to be far more valuable than the difference between an A and a B. So
Mhm.
just get out there and meet people. That's my
Yeah,
suggestion.
yeah. I think for everyone listening in, I think just coming in, if like especially if you went straight from high school to university, or even if you just took a gap year, you're still very much in a mindset where school kind of teaches you to kind of evaluate yourself based on your grades. And that's not entirely true at all, I would say. And I would, yeah, just like you said, like no one's ever asked you for your transcript. There are like some like companies like NASA or whatever that like they will ask you for your grades and such, but if those are your career interests, I'm sure whoever's looking into that is aware of that and understands like whatever corresponding work needs to be put into it. But at the end of the day, there could be someone who has a job at these companies that do require GPAs, who got in there from a networking connection, because it really is about who you know. And I think that's a great like career tip, because sometimes it's the randomest people that like get you your next career opportunity. And I think in COVID times you can use all the network you have. So we do have a question here, and it's like, do you have any tips for COVID style networking? Because obviously now it's a lot harder when you're in your Zoom class to like talk to your friend if you don't know them already. And it's much harder than like, just like showing up to a networking event. Now it's a little bit different.
Yeah. COVID has changed the world. in a lot of ways, and networking certainly has been impacted by it. I think that it's interesting. In my experience over the last however long it's been now, 9 months or whatever, since this sort of really hit the world. I think the large group networking events have really been uh, like they've really been toned down.
Hmm.
So any large group activity, if it was a conference or if it was a career fair or whatever, there's a lot less opportunities for sort of mass networking. But I think on the flip side of that, it's opened up a lot more opportunity for one-on-one networking. So it's a lot easier to connect with somebody who you probably never would have connected with otherwise, on a Zoom call. And, like, prime example, Christina, like,
Hmm.
we met over Zoom.
Yeah.
I'll just say the one thing, I'll just throw this out there, and this is being recorded, so that's also weird. But um, the one thing about Zoom that weirds me out is I have no idea how tall anybody is. And I know that doesn't matter at all, but I just have like no idea, because like depending on how close you are to the screen or whatever, like people are different. Anyway, that of all the things of COVID, that's the thing that weirds me out the most, is I don't know how tall anybody is. But once you get over that, yeah, we've never met in real life, and yet this is the second time we've had a conversation. There's still certainly lots of opportunities to connect with people, and people are willing to give you time. So it might just be 15 minutes for a quick conversation, but there's a lot of people out there who want to meet you, who are interested to meet you, want to talk to you, willing to hear your story, want to share theirs. So yeah, there's opportunities. Now, how you set those opportunities up, um, you know, I will say this: LinkedIn is a pretty interesting networking tool.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, like, I didn't quite understand the point of social media, um,
Business style.
business, or yeah, business style, but recently LinkedIn, it's amazing. You can connect to just about anybody, without sort of the traditional gatekeepers that there'd be along the way. Um, and a lot of people will volunteer their time if uh, if you have something meaningful to ask them, or um, yeah, it's a great way to meet people. Um, I also think I, there's also meetups. Well, I don't know if anybody here is interested or takes part in those, but certainly pre-COVID, they're also, some of them were way better. But there's a lot of meetups in the community that are focused on a specific area of interest. And so if you're into, I don't know, robotics, or you're into organic chemistry or whatever, there's groups of like-minded people that get together and just talk shop about that very thing. And it's amazing. If you go to, I think it's meetup.com, just sort of search for like damn near anything, and there's a group of people who get together and just talk about it. And a lot of that has moved online. So there's Slack channels, there's um, forums, there's message boards, there's places to connect there, and you can meet some interesting people that way too. So yeah,
Yeah.
networking certainly hasn't stopped. It's definitely changed, but yeah, there's still opportunities if you go looking for them.
Yeah, I would say to that, I would say there are like LinkedIn, actually very, very powerful. People have gotten jobs at like there are tips that people give out for like getting jobs at different tech companies, and some of that includes like messaging someone who's a recruiter at one of the companies you're interested in, and like that's definitely like a valuable technique, and that's definitely like LinkedIn is a great opportunity if you yourself just don't have a network, like if you're the first one in your family studying engineering, how the hell are you going to find a network of engineers? And LinkedIn kind of gives you that opportunity like to link up with other people. And then we have some comments agreeing about the height thing with Zoom. I've had people assume that I'm taller, so that just means I exude confidence. So that I take that with pride. And I think as someone who's average height, it's nice to be on Zoom because then everyone's kind of at eye level. So that's what I enjoy about it. And then we have a question here. It's Do you think that the connections you made while dating people were equally or more important than grades? You were talking earlier about like, um, grabbing like a beer or like hanging out with your friends was like more important than like A versus B for whatever class.
The connections I made while dating people. Um, yeah, I like sure. I think any connection you make is can be a good connection. Like I don't limit it to my classmates. Yeah, there's people in my life that I have been connected to through like yeah past girlfriends or like friends of friends or boyfriends or girlfriends of my friends who've sort of expanded the network. There's a lot of people that are sort of in my close circle now that I've met through not through a classmate or whatever, but through just sort of other social circles. And yeah, I think that's equally important. So oh, there's certainly um, yeah, just meet people. Like you just don't know. Like
Yeah.
you really don't know when and where these people are going to come back in your life, but it's incredible. One of our head of product at Quote Me, I went to junior high with. Like it's
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So it's amazing. Like people come back like yeah, it's you just don't know. So the more it doesn't hurt to meet people. I'll say that.
Yeah, yeah. So and then the comment to that was just that it was nice to hear that and to for that to be mentioned just because usually dating at during engineering like schooling is just not talked about. It's mostly just like, sit down and look at your books and do your assignments and then, we'll see you 4 years later. Social life, mental health, it's okay. So yeah, I think that's like really important to emphasize that like you shouldn't like sacrifice your personal like happiness and stuff just for a grade because yeah, in most likely cases, unless you're interested in those companies that really do require you to have like a certain whatever GPA or you're interested in later on pursuing academia, then your grades really don't matter as much. Like as long as it's like not abysmal, you'll probably be fine, right? So, you know, just like not to say not to work hard, but like, don't work to the extent that you're sacrificing just like meaningful life connections and that can come from the form if like, you want to date, then you date or like making friends and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like it shouldn't your classes shouldn't be your life. Like I don't know. I looking back now, so it's 2007, I guess, so 13 years ago, I guess I graduated from the U of A. And do I regret, like, do I ever look back and wish that I had spent more time studying? No. Like, not once. And there was a calculus 3 test that I wrote that went really, really poorly. And I still remember starting question 1 and being like, I don't know how to do this. Going to question 2, being like, I don't know how to do this. And then getting to question 6 and flipping, and then it was the formula sheet and being like, oh shit, I went through 6 questions. I don't know how to start any of them, and tried to figure it out. That I somehow managed to pass barely. Um, if I was to do it all over again, would I study more for that test? No. Like in the big
Yeah.
picture, it made zero difference. But I made some really good friends while I was in university. I've got one of my best friends now. We've got kids that are the same age, and our kids play together, right? Like we met in university. Yeah, no, I don't regret the time I spent with my friends, and I certainly don't look back and wish that I'd spent more time studying. So yeah,
Mhm.
um, there are certain, and I don't even know if it's jobs. Like you've referenced NASA a couple of times now, and I'm just going to throw it out there that I have a friend that worked at NASA, mechanical engineering. We went to high school together. We did first year together. He went Mechie, I went Civi. Um, he ended up going down to the States, and I know he didn't have a 4.0 GPA, and he worked at NASA.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
he his career path, he didn't get there right out of school. He went to go work for Pratt and Whitney in Montreal. He got a master's degree in aerospace engineering, but I still don't think he had a 4.0, and then ended up going down and working for NASA. So it was still, I think for them, it was the work experience more than his. Obviously, he needed the degree. Like that was sort of par for the course. He wasn't getting in there without it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would be surprised if they asked for his transcripts either. I don't know. Like the grades just are not that important after you
Yeah.
graduate. You know.
Mhm.
So
So yeah, that was very, very wonderful discussion we had here tonight. I'm going to stop the recording, and I'm just gonna like stop the cloud recording for now.